Okay, good morning and welcome to Iyun Benzion, Nedarim Daf Yud 10, number 19. The Gemara on Daf Yud 10 mostly discusses the concept of Safek Nedarim La'achmer, Safek Nazirus, you go Lahakel. The Gemara's Maskana is that Nazirus generally people don't want to take a Safek Nazirus upon themselves because it ends up being worse to be a Safek Nazir than a Vadai Nazir. By Nedarim, there's no worry about that. So, Stam Nedarim, like a regular Safek Rice al Chumrah, go your Machmir. The very end of Yutamid Beis, we find out the Mishnah on Yud Chetamid Beis, the last line reflects the opinion of a different Tana. Elazar Tzadok says Stam Nedarim actually to go Kula. So it comes out, this Maklas Tanoim, whether we say by Nedarim, Stam Nedarim Lahachmir, or Lahakil. Now, obviously, the opinion of Sam Dar Lahakar makes more sense based on the content of Safek Darais al Chumrah. So, how do you explain Rav Tzadok's Shita, which is apparent in the Mishnah, that there is an opinion, a legitimate opinion, that Sam Darim is a Hakel? Why should that be? So, I think it gets back into understanding the way a nether works, is that we've learned the nether is an Isra Chefsa, as opposed to a shvu, which is Isra Gabra, and it applies to the chefsa. It's chal in certain ways on the actual object. You're answering a piece of meat, a piece of loaf of bread. It's chal on the object itself. Now, in what way is it chal on the object? So there's two ways I think of looking at it. One way of looking at it is that a neder is a powerful lashon. It's a powerful language, more powerful than a shvua, for example. It's a koch dibor. Dibor, even though dibor usually is considered a lav she'emo ma'isa. In certain instances, a dibor akamas piv is considered a ma'isa. And here, where you're taking a strong language to asra chefsa, the dibor is significant and it makes a new chalos, a new status on this chefsa. So it's basically emanating from the dibor itself. There's another way of looking at Nedarim, and basically this is the idea of hatfasa by Nedarim. Whether you need hatfasa, according to the Rosh or the Ran, maybe it's even possible to have another even without hatfasa. But if you are in matfis, even the Ran is moda that there is a concept in the Dar through hatfasa, where you say konam kikar zu Allah. You compare konam is a kinoi for a korban. Korban kikar zu Allah. You compare it to a korban. When you do hatfasa, it's more than just that the dibor changes the chalos. It's actually that by comparing it to a korban, in a certain sense, you're making it like hektish. That's, if I would say a neder by a korban, when I say this animal, I am being makdish it as a korban shlamim or korban ola, which you're allowed to do. It changes the status of that animal. Now, it's not just that it's chal on the chefsa of the animal, which a nedava is, a neder in certain senses also. It actually changes the status. It's mashana the status. Besides the fact that it's usher, it also changes it that it now has become the property. It changes it financially. It now becomes the property of hektish. Now, no one's going to say when you take konam kikar zu alai that the bread is now part of your korban toda. It's not a korban. However, there's a discussion later on Daf Lamed Daled whether there's me'ilah by konamos or not. Is there a concept of me'ilah, meaning if a person gets hana when they're not supposed to from something which is aser within konam, does it have to do with milah? You have to bring a korban. You also have to pay an extra 1/5 penalty. So in a certain sense, it is quasi hektish. It becomes quasi hektish. So if the pshat in there is just your words create a stronger isser on the chefsa, so then right, it's a regular isser d'oraisa, and stam nedarim lahakmir would be relevant, right? Because you made a deep where the dibur was said. So we don't know if the Isra is chal or not. It's a regular case of Isra v'heter. Stam nedarim is a hakmir. However, if you learn that it actually gives it a quasi hektish status, which obviously only applies by konamos, when you compare it to a korban, so then it's not just that the Isra is chal on the chefsa. You're actually changing the nature of the chefsa, changing the mamadus of the chefsa, that there's shayach and Isra me'ilah possibly. It's not really a korban. Maybe it's not in the yado shel gizbar, the hektish. It doesn't belong to hektish. They can't collect it for the Beis Hamikdash's funds. Nonetheless, in a certain sense, we'll have to figure out uh, exact parameters of this, but it does change the status of it. And when you're talking about dinim mamonis and changing the status, there's a concept of hamosi mechaver olav aya. You have to bring up proof, and there's a concept of chazaka, right? When we're trying to change the status, so did the status change? Did it not change? So we rely on chazaka at that point. There's a chazaka that until you answer this piece of meat, this rib stick, it was mutter. It was mutter. So you're trying to change the status. So you're ma'imid davar al chazkasa. You keep it on the chazaka. You keep it with the chazaka. And the chazaka was that it wasn't a neder. It wasn't asr. So when it comes to changing the status, which I think might be a possibility when it comes to hatfasa, when you're connecting it to a korban, so therefore you rely on chazaka and maybe hamosi mechaver ala araya. So therefore, right, savik mamon lakula, savik mamon. If someone wants to say this is aser, you rely on the chazaka, and hamosi mechaver ala, you have to disprove the chazaka in order to make sure this is aser, and that's why Elazar Tzadok says stam Nedarim, in a certain case, is considered to be Golakula. So now we have an opinion that Stam Nedarim is Lakula. So it's Malas Tanoim. Rebuta holds Stam Nedarim is Golachumra. And as a result, Stam Nedarim, you go Lakula. So just bringing back to this Machlokas, the original Machlokas in the Sechta between the Ran and the Rush, let's say the Shita of the Ran. The Ran has two different types of Nedarim. You have a Neder, which is you're not matfis to a carbon. Neder, you're matfis to a carbon. So according to the Ran, it's possible to have two different constructs of Neder, right? Maybe the Neder Tzadok only says you go lakula when you're matfis, when you're not matfis it, right? Other Tzadok would emote it to Rabbi Yehuda, so according to the Rosh, every type of Neder is hatfasa, right? We'd really like to align the Rosh with Rabbi Yehuda, but that seems to be the main opinion in the Gemara. So how would you reconcile with Rabbi Yehuda if he holds that you need hatfasa? So we'd probably like to say, according to the Rush, that yes, Stam Nedarim are lahachmir, and maybe we have to, according to the Rush, his concept of hatfasa, you connect to the carbon, even though we said it's quasi hektish, maybe it's not really changing the status. This will have to be investigated more when we get to the sugya of yesh mila b'konamos or ein mila b'konamos. Anyway, that's short, succinct explanation of Machlokas, Yehuda, and Razor Tzadok. Hope you enjoyed today's share. See you in the next one.